Hey guys, so before I told you that I'm like a super nerd about, oh, all right guys, so before I told you about my huge interest and fascination with mountains and land formations, and it just fascinates me. I think about how, I'm like 30-ish years old, a big ish on that one, but rocks and mountains and formations and canyons and bluffs, all those things are millions and millions and million years old. So if there's a rock or a mountain that is 30 million years old, it is about a million times as old as I am. And I just have such a hard time trying to wrap my brain around it. But I wanted to show you how fascinated I am with these things, because our family vacations often take us to very adventuresome places. And I wanted to share some of these real life experiences with erosion that my family and I have experienced. So, try to skip ahead here. This place is called Garden of the Gods near Colorado Springs in Colorado. You can see here these different formations, and this probably looked so much different. It was probably so much taller before, but through ice wedging and root wedging and wind and rain and water, it totally changed the landscape. Something in this next picture that I found absolutely fascinating, wait till it gets there, is that these roots, you can see that this is the trunk of the tree right here, and these roots are above the ground. And this is, I believe, sandstone. And my theory now, my idea about this is that these roots were once underground, but wedged into the rock and broke it away. And you can see all these little tiny pebbles. And obviously these roots are still in the rock there. And that makes me think they are going to break the rock away. You can see the roots down here too. So I find it so fascinating. All of the other rock that was probably once up to the tree trunk here, those roots broke it away. You can even see a boulder right there. If we go a little bit ahead, here are my kids, Robbie and Jake. You can see the roots. They're going over their heads. And I know Robbie here is squatting down, so that is still pretty big. And you can see some of the rock that is still in there that the roots have wedged and broken away. So you have a real life visual of how that looks and kind of the after effects of it, because this is the main trunk, which was likely the rocks were likely come up about here, and the roots just went ahead and broke it up and wedged their way in. Fast forward this one. Here is, again, in Garden of the Gods, these huge, it was so fun to climb. My children about gave me a heart attack with where they were climbing, but it was so fun to climb on these gigantic boulders. It was like a natural playground. And you can see this huge boulder on top of these other cliffs and bluffs in the Garden of the Gods. And Robbie standing there. Robbie, he's in 4th grade as well, so he's a pretty average height 4th grader. You can see Jake sitting there. That rock didn't seem like it was going anywhere anytime soon, but it definitely got there somehow. We can kind of wonder how it did get there.
I know, but there's something odd. There wasn't like any mountains that were higher than that.
Mm-hmm. Which really makes me wonder what used to be there and what did that landscape used to look like.
So, I mean, it could have been there, but just broke up into rocks somehow.
Mm-hmm. Okay, moving on. Okay. Ooh. See, want to get my little intro title slide here.
Mm-hmm.
my plan isn't working out as well, but I'm going to go with it. All right, so this is Rocky Mountain National Park in Estes Park, Colorado. Now, Rocky Mountain National Park is gigantic, and it's not only in Estes Park, Colorado. Estes Park just happens to be in the northwest part of Rocky Mountain National Park. This is one of my favorite spots in Rocky Mountain National Park because it has such a rich history. Way back in the olden days, July 15th, 1982, 5 days before I was born, there was a large dam towards the top or about in the middle of the mountain, and that dam flooded and broke. And caused an incredibly devastating flood when that dam broke. And I'm saying dam as in a wall that was built by humans to contain water in a lake. Well, that lake, it was called Lawn Lake, ended up emptying into down through Rocky Mountain National Park as well as into the town of Estes Park. There were some fatalities. I can't remember exactly how many. In, I want to say 2004, I had the opportunity to hike up to Lawn Lake where that dam had broken. And I saw, this is called the alluvial fan. I saw the alluvial fan at the bottom, and then you hike up to Lawn Lake where the dam had broken. And it's a beautiful, crystal clear lake. It was one of the most incredible things I'd ever seen. So that was in 2004. We went back this last summer and we got to experience the alluvial fan in a different way because in 2013, there was another flood that flooded the alluvial fan even more. So all of these rocks that you see were even more spread out than when I saw them in 2004. And it was really incredible to experience that and see the changes. And that's not an experience a lot of people have. So I feel very fortunate, but you have to think about all of these smaller rocks, these boulders and things like that. I mean, one of these boulders could be about the size of a person, but then you have all these varying rocks and their different shapes and their smoothness is different. And you can go around and you can pick up these rocks to experience that. Robbie, did you want to add something?
Yes. I remember we wanted to hike, but we couldn't because they're like building a new thing so that people in wheelchairs can actually see it.
Yeah, over the new rocks that the 2013 flood brought down off the mountain, they are building ramps so it is accessible so people that use wheelchairs or even moms with strollers or people can access and get to the alluvial fan because it's not a difficult hike to get here. It's only about 1/4 mile, but you definitely have to climb over some stuff.
I remember me and my dad went like over here and climbed down some rocks, but this way, I'm pretty sure, but like a little behind my mom, they were building it.
Yeah, it was actually over here.
It was. Okay.
All right. All right. So in this picture, we found a couple elk. I see a big male elk with his big, huge antlers, and I don't know if this is a female elk or just a younger elk. But the point that I put there, the reason I put this picture in is because you can see. All right. So we have this. It looks like kind of a prairie. But everywhere you look in Rocky Mountain National Park, you see these gigantic boulders just kind of sticking up out of the soil, which again makes you wonder, how did they get there? Because right here, there's not really a mountain. So it makes you wonder, how did it get there? Was a mountain much closer? Was there a huge landslide that brought all these rocks down? What caused the landslide? There's so many different questions. My question is, how long ago could those things have happened? All right, here's the Grand Canyon in Arizona. My husband and I were lucky enough to hike into and then out of, we did a 26-mile hike in 2 days. and went from the south rim to the north rim. Yep. I was thinking maybe we went north to south. It really doesn't matter. But this is one of my favorite pictures from from Grand Canyon because what they call striations in the rocks and how cool and kind of smooth these layers of rock are. These layers of rock can tell us how old the rock is, or geologists at least, and I'm no geologist, but it's incredibly interesting to me.
That would take a really long time to count that.
Mm-hmm. That, and because this was at my eye level, and this cliff this cliff wall was very, very high.
I bet a bobcat would live in there.
Maybe. I'm glad there wasn't one there when we walked by. But I think about how this was formed. How could this have been formed? And I'm thinking, this is just my claim. I'm not a geologist. I'm not a scientist. I am just curious. I feel like this could have been created by water and the flow of water. I don't know how long ago. And then also I see these fracture lines, and that makes me think that there's some ice wedging happening because there's no plants to root wedge. And I do know that it does, even though the Grand Canyon is in Arizona, it's in northern Arizona, and northern Arizona does have seasons much like we do here in Illinois.
What my theory is for that is that if there was like a huge boulder on like the other side, it would hit the wall and then just get a big chunk out of it.
Maybe. I'm not going to say it's impossible. Okay, this picture fascinated me. And I took these pictures way before I knew what ice wedging or what root wedging was. And I just wondered, and I was so curious because I would see these big long lines. And this reminds me of like if you get a birthday cake and you cut into the birthday cake and you cut down here and here, and then you would like take the spatula or the knife or whatever, and then get it on the bottom of the pan and then pull it out. How in the world can this happen? Obviously, nobody took a gigantic 100-foot long knife and cut this out. But now with the idea of ice wedging, it makes sense. I can imagine that this fracture line, if it is ice wedging that is taking place, I can imagine that that it would take a very long time to create this fracture. And I can also imagine that it's going to take a very long time for anything else, maybe this piece to fall off or this larger piece to fall off because it's right in the middle.
I was going to say, that looks like it might fall someday. Like maybe the wind would push it and they'll just fall back.
The wind has a lot to do with erosion too, or the breaking away of a landform. All right, here I like this picture because this is an incredible example of kind of those rock falls. Obviously, I did not see the rock fall. I would focus on that. But I feel like if you could get closer to this wall somehow, or maybe even on top, or maybe even this section over here, you can probably take this is a very, very large boulder, and you can probably, like a puzzle, try to find where that came from by looking at the striations in the rock and lifting it up. I would imagine it would be really hard, and I would imagine it would be very heavy.
Because this could have came somewhere else from that mountain.
But I bet you if you took the time, you could do it. This is another really cool example of that rock fall. You can see, again, you can probably take these pieces, and this looks like, a much bigger puzzle with many smaller pieces. But take these pieces and look at this wall and see where they fell from in this natural erosion process. So, and again, there's no plants over here. So I would suspect my scientific claim would be that there was some ice wedging taking place, or Yeah, I guess that would be my claim.
What I think these rocks down here may have come from like up here.
Maybe. It makes me want to go back and investigate further.
I want to go with you.
Probably.
Next time.
Okay, this absolutely boggled my mind. And I'm so glad we're doing this mystery with Mystery Science because it inspired me to find some answers. This rock wall was solid. Huge rock wall, just a canyon wall that went on forever, it seemed like. But I'm looking at these holes and I'm wondering how were these holes created? Was it an animal that was really persistent and dug through? Was it something to do with water, like inside the rock that slowly wore away the inside of the rock and then found its way out? I wasn't sure, so I went ahead and I Googled.
Mom, so these some birds live inside of them, and I remember when we were up in Colorado, there was like this whole wall that was just covered in them.
Okay, but do you think the birds created it, or do you think the birds are just using it?
No, they just use it.
Okay, so I Googled and I found something, and it's these yellow arrows. They're called a karst. It's kind of a weird word to say. This is an active karst terrain in Marble Canyon, which is a portion of the Grand Canyon. This is not my picture. I found this in a document online. A karst, though, is a void or an empty place along which water moves in the subsurface. So my water idea was right, because if we have a subsurface, we have our surface that we can see, and sub means under. So under this surface, there's water that's moving, and that water is constantly kind of wearing away inside the rock and then eventually comes out.
That makes me wonder, what if that water was always just up to here?
The water from the river down here?
Yeah.
I'm confident, Robbie, that based on books I've read and experiences I've had, that the water level has risen and fallen. So this water could also have worn away. And you can see here, there's different lines, and it looks like the water does rise and fall. That was a good wonder. Okay.
I think next to it, Turkey Run.
Nope. This, again, not my photo, but these are larger karsts. So they said a karst terrain. So these, the little tiny holes that I saw on the wall, I'm thinking, and I'm curious, but I'm pretty sure they'll eventually get big and create kind of like caves, which could become habitats for
like
animals.
Maybe bobcats can live in there.
Bobcats, I bet you bats go in there.
And again, I think I think again the water probably rose.
All right, this wall actually, this was a really cool wall, and it's just something really cool to see. And I feel like it is definitely some ice wedging in action, and probably has been happening for a long time. You can see the trail right here. It is a very narrow trail, but this wall, it was just crumbling. I could literally take my fingers and just flick off pieces of this rock, and you can see all of these fractures and all of the rubble coming down here. And I bet you the wind is helping.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say yesterday, but
I bet you the wind is helping get some of these off, as well as humans too. Humans help things erode, which we need to be careful about.
Because just what if you flick off just one of these little pebbles, it might make a landslide.
No,
sometimes.
This would be if you looked up on this wall while we were hiking, the fracturing of this rock did not go all the way up. Not saying that it won't, but just as humans, we need to be respectful of national parks and our environment. I did have a student make a claim, though, that sometimes rocks might fracture underneath the weight and pressure of the rocks that are above it. Do you think that is a decent claim? I think so too. So
all the pressure could just push on it, and then maybe it would just like push down all the rocks and then they would just crumble off.
Okay, question for you, Robbie.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it could be a combination of the pressure and weight of the rocks above and ice wedging?
Well, I don't know much about ice wedging.
Okay, and I'm gonna let your teacher teach you that. But I think there could be a combination of different types of
Yeah.
erosion. Do you think there could be different types of erosion happening all in one
The
place?
pressure might hit it, like give it pressure, and then it might get loose, and then the ice wedge might happen, and then some of it might crumble off, and we still have some pieces, and the wind might help blow all that off.
And then people stepping on it could even crunch it into almost like a sand, right? Okay, moving on.
Next, I'm pretty sure it's Turkey Run.
Okay. Oh, this is another really good example.
Wait, did we skip?
Stop.
You gotta pause it.
This is another really good example of possible ice wedging. We see these fracture lines. We can see water going in there, freezing, expanding.
That's what I said.
Expanding, and then breaking the rock apart. This is a great example of shoe erosion and what sand can do to your hiking shoes. I'm really glad he had an extra pair. Okay, Turkey Run State Park, Indiana. I wanted to show you guys this because you don't have to go far to see examples of these. Turkey Run is about 4 hours away from here, 5 including northern Illinois traffic. But you can see on this gigantic boulder, which we walked underneath, we have trees that are growing in the moss and on this boulder all over it. There were tons and tons of trees in Turkey Run State Park.
I took this picture.
Yeah, you did a great job. Thank you. Okay, so there's likely going to be a lot of root wedging happening. And here's a good example of that too. As you can see, these boulders have fallen off of something. I don't know where because there weren't any mountains, but there could be cliffs and bluffs. We have a lot of bluffs in Illinois, which is kind of like a canyon. And you can see all of these trees. I see a fracture line here, which makes me think maybe there was some root wedging happening over there and possibly here too. So these roots are like, oh, these seeds are like, I'm gonna go ahead and grow, but I need to break you apart. Oh yeah, a little fracture there. I didn't know about root wedging when we went down there.
Yeah.
So I would like to go back when we do go back.
I thought it was called root wedgie.
No, wedging. Yeah. So I would like to go back and investigate a little bit more of that root wedging. And that tree, here's a opposite view of that tree. The trail grows right underneath that boulder.
Someday I think that's probably just gonna fall down.
Maybe.
And then
I'm gonna blame this tree right here. I'm gonna blame that tree. But it might not happen for a really, really, really long time. Okay.
It looks like some of the back of this rock just crumbled off onto the trail.
Let's forward here a little bit. Okay, here's an example. We didn't talk about really weathering much, but weathering is a type of erosion caused from rain or wind. And this, I believe, and I could be wrong, this may have been a man-made staircase, but this smoother part that kind of flows, I believe, again, my own scientific claim, I was not able to investigate it, but I believe the smoothing out of this rock is made naturally by water. It could be totally nature made, but as I look closer at it, I feel like it may have been a man-made staircase eroded by flowing water.
Mom, what I think about it is I think it might have been like kind of sand. Then this one person stepped in it and went up, and then it's just dried for the past years.
Like solidified.
Maybe like a caveman or something.
Maybe. Okay, this is one of my favorite pictures because of it gives you a really good idea of that terrain in Turkey Run State Park and all of the different layers of rock that have been layered on top of each other throughout the years, and so many different examples of erosion. We can have root wedging from all of the trees that are around and even the other plants. We can have ice wedging because ice definitely happens. We have a lot of water in Turkey Run State Park, and that water is going to freeze up, expand, and then possibly break off. We have a lot of water erosion and likely a lot of wind erosion as well. So all of these natural things are changing the way the surface of the earth looks, which again is just absolutely fascinating to me. I'm not a geologist, I'm not a scientist, but I am very curious. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Have a good one.